The monsters in the show From are, well, they're the stuff of nightmares, right? But what if their real identity isn't some brand new creation? What if it's a secret that's been hidden for centuries in ancient folklore? So today, we're going to open the case file on a theory that connects the horrors of Fromville to the super dark world of the Fae. Let's get into it. All right, so let's just quickly set the scene here. The poor residents of Fromville are trapped, and every single night they face this same horrifying threat. These creatures that just stroll out of the forest with a smile on their face and, murder in their hearts. But what even are they? And yeah, that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The show is just a masterclass in suspense. It gives us just enough to be absolutely terrified, but not enough to have any clear answers. So we're going to piece together the evidence, starting with what we actually know for sure. I mean, just think about how specific these traits are. They look human during the day, but at night they turn into these grinning nightmares with rows of shark-like teeth. They're incredibly strong, they're fast, and they use telepathy to psychologically torture their victims. And this is a big one. They don't kill to eat, they mutilate for the fun of it. Oh, and they're immortal. These are not just your average monsters. This is a very, very specific profile. And that specificity, well, that's where our whole theory really gets started. What if the writers of From aren't just making all this up as they go along? What if they're pulling from a very, very old playbook? Let's dive into the deep connection this show seems to have with ancient folklore. Okay, so to get on the same page, we need a working definition of the Fae. Now, forget what you think you know about tiny fairies with wings. The term Fae is this huge umbrella that covers all sorts of supernatural beings from cultures all over the globe. They live in realms parallel to ours, they're tied to nature, they wield magic, and their dealings with humans can be anything from helpful to just capriciously evil. Definitely keep that parallel realms and capriciously evil part in mind. And this is the first major clue. And honestly, it's kind of a bombshell. The show is called From. Well, it turns out that in Scottish Gaelic, one of the words for Fae is from. Yeah. The answer may have been hidden in plain sight, right there in the title from the very beginning. Okay, so if the show is about the Fae, then what kind are we actually talking about here? This is where we start to really build the case, connecting the dots between some specific ancient myths and the monsters that are currently plaguing Fromville. All right, let's meet our prime suspect, the Slua. In Celtic folklore, these are not your garden variety pixies. The Slua are a terrifying, ghostly host of the unforgiven dead. We're talking souls so malicious and wicked that even hell apparently didn't want them. They represent the absolute darkest corner of Fae mythology. I mean, when you put them side by side, the parallels are honestly, they're chilling. The Slough hide by day and hunt at night, just like the monsters. They love psychological torture, just like the monsters use telepathy to drive people mad. And here's the biggest link. The Slough hunt for sport. They mutilate their victims not to eat them. It's a near-perfect match. And that's the absolute key here, right? It's the shared motivation. These creatures, whether you call them Slue or the monsters from Fromville, they aren't driven by hunger. They feed on emotion. They feast on terror, hopelessness, and despair. That's not just a monster. That's a predator of the human soul. Okay, but the Slough myth, it doesn't explain everything, like how they can look so perfectly human. For that, we turn to another classic Fae concept, the changeling. These were Fae who would snatch a human and leave a perfect mimic in its place, a creature that looked totally human on the outside but was secretly a monster underneath. This explains the monster's dual nature perfectly. So that begs the question, how did these things even come to be? Well, the show hints at a pretty tragic origin story that lines up perfectly with another classic Fae trope, the deceptive, magical bargain that goes horribly, horribly wrong. So the story seems to go something like this. A group of people wished for eternal life, but the price was horrific. They had to sacrifice their children. And the wish was granted, but with a cruel Fae-like twist. They got their immortality all right, but it was by being cursed to become the very monsters that now haunt the town. It's classic Fae logic. Be careful what you wish for, because they will grant it in the worst way possible. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This is all ancient, dusty folklore, right? Well, not exactly. This thread of dark Fae mythology was actually picked up by one of the most influential horror writers of all time, which adds a really fascinating modern layer to this whole theory. And that writer was H.P. Lovecraft. In his story, The Whisperer in Darkness, he actually name drops his inspiration, the fantastic lore of lurking little people. He took these ancient fey myths about hidden evil races and just reimagined them as cosmic horror.
Just think about his famous Deep Ones for a second. They're an ancient race living in a parallel realm, the sea. They make bargains with humans for immortality in exchange for sacrifices, and the people who accept, they slowly transform into monsters. It's the exact same structure as the Fey bargain. Lovecraft basically filtered Fey folklore through a cosmic horror lens, and it really looks like From is following in those same footsteps.
All right, let's pull all these threads together. We've got the linguistics, we've got the specific monster traits, the origin story, even a connection to modern horror. So, does the Fey theory actually hold up as this grand unifying explanation for all the mysteries of Fromville?
Well, when you lay out all the evidence like this, the case is pretty compelling. The monsters, they're a perfect match for Slug and changelings. The faraway trees, they act just like mythical fairy tree portals. The talismans, they probably use iron, which is the classic weakness of the Fae. The town itself feels like a Fae pocket dimension, a cruel, rigged game. And it all circles right back to the show's title. It's this whole web of connections, and every single thread points to one source.
And if you're still not convinced, check this out. It's what the showrunners themselves have said, or rather what they've said it isn't. They have gone on record to debunk all the other popular theories. It's not a dream, it's not purgatory, it is not a computer simulation. So by ruling out all these sci-fi and spiritual explanations, they're kind of implicitly pointing us towards something else, something much more ancient and mythological.
But this might be the final nail in the coffin, the most damning piece of evidence of all. Showrunner John Griffin himself said that the clues were all there right from the very start. So what's the very first story told in the entire series? Julie, in the RV, tells a story about fairies and the Lake of Tears. They literally told us the answer in the first 10 minutes of the show.
So if we accept all this evidence, it really leads to one chilling conclusion. This town is a pocket dimension run by sadistic Fae. It's a rigged game for their own amusement. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. If this is a Fae game, are the humans trapped there the players? Or are they just the pieces on the board? Thanks for joining this explainer.